You have been told patience is a virtue. Every sermon confirmed it. Every devotional reinforced it, and you believed it. But no one warned you there is a version of patience that does not come from faith. It comes from exhaustion. And the terrifying part, the part worth staying for, is that the two feel almost identical from the inside. If you have been watching the world for a while, the moral acceleration, the prophetic markers stacking up, the events that would have startled believers even a decade ago, there is a good chance something inside you has quietly settled. Not grown deeper, settled. You still believe in the return of Christ. You still read Scripture. You still nod when the signs of the times are mentioned. But somewhere in the last few years, the urgency left, and you made peace with that. You called it not being alarmist. You called it theological maturity. You called it patience. But here is the question no one has been direct enough to ask you. What if that stillness is not faith that has grown strong? What if it is your spiritual discernment going dark, slowly, quietly, in a place you cannot see from the outside? There is a difference between a watchman who waits with calm, eyes wide open, reading every movement on the horizon, and a watchman who fell asleep at his post. Both are still. Both look composed from a distance. Both are wearing the uniform. But only one of them is actually watching. And the city does not know the difference until it is too late. In 2 Peter 3:4, there is a verse Christians almost always read as a warning aimed at outsiders, mockers who say, "Where is the promise of his coming? Everything continues just as it has since the beginning of creation." We picture skeptics, critics, people who never believed. But what if the most dangerous form of that voice is not outside the church? What if it lives inside the theologically informed, biblically literate, experienced believer, the one who has stopped being startled by things that should still startle? The internal mocker does not sound like doubt. It sounds like wisdom. It sounds like experience. It whispers, "We have seen this pattern before. People get worked up. Years pass. Nothing changes. This is simply how the world is." That voice feels like discernment. It might be the most subtle form of spiritual blindness in existence. Neurologists discovered something deeply unsettling in sleep deprivation research. A person who has been awake for extended periods will begin experiencing what scientists call microsleep, involuntary blackouts lasting between 3 and 15 seconds. The terrifying detail is this: the person has no awareness it happened. The brain appears active. The eyes may be open, but perception has gone dark for a moment, and life continued around them without their knowledge. Jesus described the spiritual version of microsleep in Luke 21:34, and it deserves to be read slowly. Be careful, or your hearts will be weighed down with carousing, drunkenness, and the anxieties of life, and that day will close on you suddenly like a trap. Notice what he named: not rebellion, not active sin, not a theological crisis. The anxieties of life, the weight of ordinary, familiar concerns, the routine heaviness of a normal existence slowly pressing down on a heart that used to feel urgency. You do not need to be running from God to go spiritually dark. You just need to be gradually, almost imperceptibly, less disturbed by things that once disturbed you deeply. There is a description in Proverbs that is uncomfortable to read because it is so precise. The person avoiding responsibility says, "There is a lion outside. I will be killed in the public square." They know the danger exists. They can articulate it accurately, but they use that knowledge as a reason not to move. Spiritual numbness does exactly the same thing with prophetic awareness. It does not deny the signs. It says, "Yes, I know there has always been moral decay. There have always been wars. The church has faced apostasy in every generation. Nothing is new." And technically, every word of that is defensible. But that accurate information becomes a sedative. Truth gets repurposed. Every correct observation becomes a reason to lower the watch. The most dangerous Christians in these times are not those who deny the prophetic signs. They are the ones who can name every sign, acknowledge every pattern, cite every scripture, and feel absolutely nothing. Here are 3 specific patterns, 3 signs that what you are calling patience may actually be numbness that has settled in without announcement. Warning sign 1, the disappearance of intercessory prayer. Not personal prayer, that may still be happening, but the kind of prayer that carries weight. The kind that interrupts your sleep with a burden for specific souls, for the people around you accelerating toward eternity without Christ, for the moral direction of a culture moving at increasing speed. That prayer is costly, and when it goes quiet, it is rarely because your theology changed. It is because urgency left. Urgency is what produces intercession. The watchman who no longer believes the city is under threat eventually stops climbing the wall. Warning sign 2, the loss of moral shock. Not rage, not panic, but that particular quality of being genuinely unsettled, the kind that drives you toward God in prayer rather than toward your phone for commentary. Paul warned Timothy that in the last days there would be people holding a form of godliness but denying its power. The form remains: Sunday attendance, correct doctrine, familiar vocabulary. The shape of Christian life is perfectly intact, but the interior has gone hollow. And the clearest evidence is the moment when what used to move you to intercession now merely generates a thought about how bad things have gotten and then passes. Warning sign 3, the gravitational pull of personal comfort. Not luxury, simply comfort. The slow, almost invisible process of arranging your daily decisions around convenience rather than calling, around what is manageable rather than what is urgent. This is precisely what Jesus named in Luke 21, the anxieties of life weighing down the heart. Not catastrophe, not rebellion, just ordinary heaviness, accumulated daily, gradually replacing the weight of eternity as the thing that shapes your choices. Here is what makes this so difficult to recognize in yourself. Spiritual numbness does not feel wrong. It feels like you have grown past emotionalism, past the fringe voices who predict dates and embarrass the church, past the spiritual adolescence of early faith. You feel grounded, experienced, stable. And that feeling of stability is exactly what makes it dangerous. Revelation 3:2 contains a command so direct it almost feels unkind. Wake up, strengthen what remains and is about to die, for I have found your deeds unfinished in the sight of my God. This was not a church in chaos. This was a church with a name, a history, a reputation for having been alive. A church that almost certainly saw itself as the mature, seasoned, theologically sound expression of Christian faith. And Jesus said it was a body that had not finished dying. The watchman who fell asleep did not betray his post. He did not remove his uniform. He did not announce to anyone that he no longer believed enemies existed. He simply closed his eyes, and in the gap between vigilance and exhaustion, in that quiet, defensible, seemingly reasonable space, the city became vulnerable in a way it did not even recognize. Biblical patience, the real form, is not passive stillness. The Greek word used in Revelation 14:12 is hupomone. It does not mean waiting without feeling. It means active, gripping endurance. The patience of someone holding a position under sustained pressure. It describes a person who has not let go, not someone who no longer feels what they are holding. The sleeper and the vigilant watchman are both completely still, but the quality of that stillness is entirely different. One is rooted, the other has simply run out of something. The question is not whether you believe in the return of Christ. The question is whether that belief is still warm, still active, still shaping the prayers you pray, the way you grieve for souls, the way you read what is accelerating in the world around you. Ask God for what Ezekiel 36:26 describes: a heart of flesh in place of stone, not because your faith is absent, because flesh responds. It registers pressure. It feels heat. It reacts to what it touches. A heart of stone can hold every correct theological position and remain completely unmoved by everything that is happening. Patience waits for the bridegroom with the lamp still burning. Numbness forgets he is coming at all. If something in this video unsettled you, do not rush past that feeling. That discomfort is not weakness. It may be the most spiritually awake you have felt in some time. If you want to keep thinking carefully about what Scripture is actually saying in a world that is moving faster than most of us can process, subscribe. There is more coming, and it will require you to stay alert.